Hello students, this is Dr. Church and we're going to take a quick look today at agriculture. I assume that you've probably had a meal today. If you haven't, I suggest you go eat right now and have a snack. Get something out of your cupboards and have something to eat. But seriously, we all eat every day in order to live, and if we're going to have food, that food is going to come from somewhere, and it comes from farms. It comes from the food that is grown, harvested, processed, somehow packaged, transported. We get grain products, we have meat products, and fish, and derived from the grains, meats, and fish, and assortment of other things. All it comes all the food that we eat. So we are looking at this from an earth science standpoint. And an ecology standpoint. So earth and environmental science is our class, and we're going to take a look at feeding the world today. Feeding the world. So human nutrition. Let's take a quick look at human nutrition. Hopefully, a couple of things maybe you haven't thought about, and really set the stage for agriculture. Why is feeding the world important? What causes malnutrition? And this really goes back to the need and drive behind feeding the world. Undernutrition and malnutrition are still significant issues, and when we don't eat, these become very important issues. If we have insufficient calories in our diet, or an improper balance in our diet, then malnutrition, undernutrition, and malnutrition can result. And it's not just having sufficient calories, you have to have the right balance of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates in your diet, along with the essential vitamins and minerals and the nutrition that you need. Food insecurity is the condition where people don't have access to that. The population in the world now is 7.8 billion and rising. 2019 was actually a good year. This chart only goes to 2016. The number of undernourished people in the world declined from 2005 to 2013. It went up just a little bit for a couple years. I think 2019 was probably the best year that the world has ever seen in terms of hunger. So that's a good thing. But I think 2020 is going to be difficult with the spread of the COVID-19 virus that has impacted industries all throughout the world. And so the data will come out on that, but that's yet to be determined. What about human nutritional needs? Grains make up the largest portion of the human diet. Corn, rice, wheat. Of the 50,000 edible plants, three species, corn, rice, and wheat, constitute about 60% of the human energy intake. And all many things that you're going to go to your cupboard and pull out breads and crackers and noodles and processed foods, and much of what you're going to pull out of your cupboard is going to come from one of these three grains, either corn, rice, or wheat. Second to that is meat, the largest component in the human diet. Most of us eat meat at least once a day. Some of you may be vegetarians or vegans. You may not eat meat per se, but that's not the typical American diet. U.S. meat consumption in the United States is actually a bit higher than consumption in the world, just simply because we have a better supply chain, and we're able to get meat, primarily chicken and then beef. I actually listened to a podcast on micro trends the other day, and they were talking about the rise in consumption of protein, and a lot of these diets that you see now. If you've heard of ketogenic diets or Atkins diets or other types of diets, what you see is an increase in the consumption of protein in those diets, and a decrease in the consumption of what's called simple carbohydrates or simple sugars. You almost eliminate all of those from your diet and go with complex carbohydrates and proteins. Well, what causes malnutrition? Well, obviously poverty, just not having disposable income, resources, political unrest. If countries are at war, if you look at the Middle Eastern countries, some of your Central African countries, some in East Asia or your West Asian countries also have impoverished areas. You've got political unrest, poor governance. It really, the government in the United States is still critical to economic benefit and the ability to feed people. And so, we need to keep a close eye on that as well. Food prices and other economic conditions. And if you look at these regions, it's also, if you think about it, it's just places where it's hard to grow, sustain, and transport food items. And so, there are geopolitical reasons behind why there's poverty and poor nutrition. So this is the total grain production in millions of tons. That's millions of metric tons from 1950 to 2015 or so, 2016. And you can see this production has gone up. So let's just round that off to 500. Well, that's doubled. There it's doubled, and there another again. So that's a fairly steep increase in food production. And again, that's been necessary in order to feed people in the world. Well, what does it take to feed people? And what are the costs of feeding people? And so that's what we're going to look at next, with a few minutes of just looking at industrial agriculture and how we've moved our food production up. So I hope this little look at human nutrition kind of sets the stage for the demand and necessity of wise management of agriculture, and how economics, political, and geological also factors will influence the production and consumption availability of food. So, all right, I hope you've learned something today. Study hard, respect, responsibility, and integrity. Integrity's first. Sorry. Integrity, respect, responsibility. Our class values. Remember those.